Dr. DeClute nodded in agreement as she stood in front of Virtuoso. War isn't all victory and glory. Tell me, did you find anything useful? I think so. The villains Omni was asking questions to may not know it, but I think they did know something useful. I'll need to talk to Shroud, Jack, and Amunet, Virtuoso said. Why? Darkspeed asked. They communicate like terrorist cells. I think I may have found a way to find the neighboring cells. Shroud studied that kind of communication and knows their protocols. Jack can hack them and find the next cell. Amunet can crack any non-Omni mental shield without detection from anywhere. That's how we'll find Vector's lair. That's good thinking, she said. One other thing, Cosmos said. What? Darkspeed asked. Just as we arrived, I could swear I felt a dimension shift, or a teleport, or something like the energy a red harness uses. Vector disappeared in a silvery flash just before we arrived. I saw it in their minds, Virtuoso said. He did that on the battle video too, she said. Let me see that video, Dr. DeClute said. Omni returned from the field to find Dr. DeClute waiting for him. She had her arms crossed and a stern face as he approached. That's the displeased face. What's going on? Omni said. Were you having fun? Dr. DeClute asked. Your question's a setup. What do you want? Your student said you found a villain's base. Not a base, just a field station. Did you get anything out of them? Sure. Their information led me to 3 more field stations before they ran out of information. I wet 31 while I was out, Omni said. Are you sure you got everything out of them? Dr. DeClute asked. I'm sure. I went Kodiak on them. Not regular Kodiak either. Kodiak on a bad day. Your team ended up following you out to the first field station you found. They did? Virtuoso heard the thoughts of the men you were going Kodiak on. Oh no, Omni said as he turned away from Dr. DeClute. How long did she listen in? Not long, but she did get some useful information about how one cell communicates with another. She thinks with help she might track down the next cell, then the next, to wherever the orders are really coming from. That's good. I need to go and talk to her, Omni said as he turned to leave. You need to talk to her about what you did to those men. Omni turned to Dr. DeClute in frustration. We are at war. Did you notice? If your tactic costs us the next generation, then the war is already lost. You know you could help me sometimes rather than just criticize. Jack was such a sweet boy. It's a marvel that he came from you, Dr. DeClute said. Omni's face went blank like it did before a fight. He said nothing and turned away from his old teammate. Dr. DeClute realized too late her comment was only meant to hurt. I didn't mean that. I'm sorry, Dr. DeClute was cut off. Save it, Omni said as he disappeared from sight. Omni continued until he found First Team in a conference room. They were meeting with Jack, Amunet, and Brains from other teams. Omni stopped to listen a moment before interrupting. I need to speak to my team, Omni said as he held the door for everyone to leave. Guys, can you give us a minute? Darkspeed said. Omni waited until the last one left and then closed the door. First Team stood and waited for their coach to talk. They didn't know if they were in trouble for leaving without permission or if it was something else. When I was first being trained by Stan, Omni continued, I was kind-hearted and believed everyone could be rehabilitated. I believed everyone deserved a second chance. But when you're in charge and your friends start dying and the news says the death toll has passed 1 million, 2 million, and on, you start to become jaded. You start to think that the faster and most efficient thing is the best thing, no matter what the cost. Omni looked thoughtfully at his team. I want to apologize for what I did today. I'd do it again. I am sorry that you were there. I'm sorry that war came again. I'm sorry that you've had to be involved while so young. I'm sorry you've ever even heard of war. I wish this whole thing would have just passed you by. Stan once told me that a superhero should never kill. He said that once a superhero takes on the role of a soldier, the harder it is to become a superhero again. He was speaking from experience. I didn't know what he meant at the time, but I do now. The ideal superhero is one who saves lives and ensures justice. When a superhero kills, he doesn't serve justice, he decides justice. It becomes a slippery slope towards vigilantism. Omni straightened himself and attempted to punctuate his final point. I know what it takes to be a superhero, more than anyone. I can train the best. That's why I moved on to Alpha after the war. I knew I could never be a superhero I was before I became what was needed to end the war. I want to win this war quick, before that happens to any of you, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make that happen. Do you understand? She was the first to nod and say, I understand. I want this war over quick too, before anyone else loses a mother. Or their brother, or cousins, Olympian said. Or their friends, Virtuoso said. Or your family has to hide, Cosmos said. Grandmother held hostage by a supervillain, Bioforce said. Darkspeed was the last to say anything. I, for one, am hoping to lose at least one family member during this war. Don't get too caught up with hate and anger. It'll cloud your thinking. Think of this as just another match to be won or another problem to be solved, Omni said. Speaking of problems to be solved, Virtuoso said to change the subject, we may have found a way to track Vector. By tracing cell communication back to the source? No, by tracing his red harness back to the source. His red harness? Omni asked, stunned. He seems to have a remote that activates a red harness. Darkspeed took a remote control and activated a flat screen on the side of the room. What am I looking at? Omni asked. It's the battle on Vancouver Island. This is just before you were rescued from the past, Darkspeed said. Retrieved. Rescue is for someone in danger, Omni said with a half grin. All right, retrieved from the past. You can't hear it, but an alarm went off and I heard it. The alarm rang at super speed. It must have been something that detected you. Vector then reaches for his belt and disappears in a silvery flash. To where? That thing requires quite a lot of energy. We never got it to work over a few miles, Omni said as he watched the video. IQ's working on how we might have done it, Virtuoso said. IQ? Amunet gave him the childhood memories and personality of a certain Omni's little brother. I think he'll mature quickly enough, Virtuoso said. Amunet says he should be well adjusted in a year or two, Darkspeed said. That's good work, you two, Omni said as he looked at Bioforce and Virtuoso. Saving lives is what it's all about. Coach, can we get the others back in here? We're trying to crack the cells, Darkspeed said. Sure, Omni said as he telekinetically opened the door. Give me a report as soon as you think you have something. Cosmos, take a break and upgrade his armor so we all have the same communication systems, Darkspeed said quickly. Let's go see your mother and brother while we're at it, Omni said. Glimmer started to follow Cosmos out of the room by habit. Omni gave her a smile and shook his head. It was enough that she knew she didn't need to guard Cosmos. As they walked down the hall, Cosmos struggled with questions he wanted to ask Omni. I haven't had much of a chance to talk to you since we found out you were Omni. Did you have something you wanted to say to me? Omni asked. Well, maybe something to ask you. What would you like to know? Well, Cosmos hesitated with what he really wanted to ask. Why never alone? Omni stopped and looked at the young Alpha. That's what you'd like to ask me? Why I came up with never alone? Yeah. Omni resumed walking as he spoke. My grandfather, the pastor I told you about, it comes from him. He gave this great sermon once when I was a kid. He told the congregation, the devil never needed to walk into the church on his own 2 feet. Satan came in on the backs of the people sitting in the sanctuary. His claws sank in deep, and he held on with a supernatural grip, a grip that no man could break on his own. That's where you got it from? Cosmos asked. I wasn't done yet, Omni continued. He told everyone that they had help. He said, God is with you, your pastor is with you, and other believers are with you. Let no man believe he has to face evil alone. He is never alone. That's how you came up with it? Cosmos asked. My grandfather was a very wise man. Would he approve of what you did today? Probably not. Sometimes I think someone like him should have been given the Omni power instead of someone as flawed as me. You mean like me? Cosmos said with a smile. Omni laughed. You've left Humble far behind, haven't you? Regardless, keep the war talk to a minimum around your mom. I'm hearing that Alex might be an Omni too, Mrs. Pringle said. It might just be that you and Mr. Pringle have whatever DNA that can turn out an Omni. I heard he's piloting a Sentinel, Omni said. They said he's a natural pilot. I'm sure he is, Omni said thoughtfully. How do you feel about him going out and fighting? The fight already came to us. He's just staying in it. Am I going to be able to do things like my brother? Alex said. Some things you will be able to do, and some things you won't, Omni said. Will I be able to fly? Oh, yes. Will I be able to make toys like Cosmos can? I don't think so, Omni said with a comical smile. But you'll be able to do other things. Like what?